This podcast does not provide medical nor legal advice. Please listen to the complete disclosure at the end of the recording.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyone Dies, the podcast where we talk about serious illness, dying, death, and bereavement. I'm Marianne Matzo, a nurse practitioner, and I use my experience from working as a nurse for 45 years now, to help answer your questions about what happens at the end of life.
And I'm Charlie Navarrete, an actor in New York City, reminding you to prepare. Develop an end-of-life plan and discuss that plan with others. The more you know, the better prepared you are to make difficult decisions.
So please relax and get yourself something to eat and drink. Don't forget to get your tea service, your white gloves, and your fancy teacups out. And thank you for spending the next hour with Charlie and me as we talk about how to write a note of condolence. That is, according to Emily Post. In the first half, Charlie talks about how Teddy Roosevelt healed after the deaths of his wife and mother, and I have the recipe of the week. In the second half, we will return to 1929 and the advice of Emily Post regarding writing condolence notes. And in our third half, Charlie has 5 tips that will assist in choosing the right words to write modern-day condolence notes. Now, our recipe of the week is the hummingbird cake, which is a banana, pineapple spice cake originating in Jamaica and a popular dessert in southern United States since the 1970s. It tastes like carrot cake and banana cake, like if they got together and had a baby. The ingredients include flour, sugar, salt, vegetable oil, ripe banana, pineapple, cinnamon, pecans, vanilla extract, and eggs. It's served with a cream cheese frosting and is rich and yummy. Bake it in a sheet pan, and you will please the mourners at your next funeral lunch.
That sounds
so, Charlie,
good.
How are you?
I
know, huh?
Yeah. Fine. The weather's a little nuts, but what else is new? How about you? What's going on?
That's what happens.
Yes.
Well, I'm glorifying in my roses and flowers that are blooming and digging in the dirt and all the happy things, you know.
Yeah, spring came very early here in New York, and
well, you didn't have a winter, did you?
Yeah, there were about 4 days where it was cold. I mean, nothing like Oklahoma cold, but cold. And really, that was it.
No, Oklahoma doesn't get cold.
It doesn't? I imagine
No.
The wind, what is it from Oklahoma?
Sweeping down the plains.
Yeah, the wind comes sweeping down the plains, no?
As long as the wind comes out of the south, it's warm.
Oh.
Now, if that wind comes out of the north, it can get a little frigid, but we're considered, I think, south, so we're pretty warm most of the time. I mean, we have our days, but don't we all?
Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of the flowers they bloom to come and go.
Popping everywhere.
No, not here. Especially like the cherry blossom trees. Yeah, they're gone
all over.
They've come and gone already. I mean, like a couple of weeks ago for some. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been having rain, but they say April flowers bring May flowers. So
we'll see. Yeah. Okay.
Hey, do you know what Mayflowers bring?
June busting out all over.
Nope.
What?
Pilgrims.
I'm sorry, pilgrims. The guys in the hats and the.
Yeah, Mayflowers. Get it?
Mayflowers. Oh, that's clever. Mayflowers, pilgrims. Yes.
I know like 3 jokes. That's one of them.
And it's a good one.
Why, thank you.
Yes.
So what's all this fuss about Teddy Roosevelt?
Well, it's not really fuss. It is sad. I mean, he lost his mother and his wife the first day. And, of course, he
lost them where?
On 26th Street. Here in Manhattan, on 26th Street.
All right.
So, yeah, they both died the same day. He was just absolutely devastated and sprang into action and left his children and went out to Dakota. But, that's why he had to...
Who do you leave?
Well, his daughter
Who did he leave
Alice,
his kids with?
his was with his brother, and who else? It was his one family. I think it was his brother who lived next door. So with them, and of course, I mean they were wealthy, so I mean they had servants and everything. Uh, yeah, but he just took off. He just needed to deal with his grief. Uh, didn't really consider that maybe his children needed something too. But not to criticize him, but that's just what the thinking was at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a heartbreaking but an instructive story about dealing with grief from our 26th president. If you're unfamiliar with the moment, quote, the light went out of his life, it happened on February 14th in 1884. That was the day both his young wife, Alice, and his 48-year-old mother died in the same house, leaving behind a newborn girl, now without a mother or maternal grandmother, and that would have been his daughter, Alice. Teddy was absolutely devastated. After the double funeral, he packed his bags and moved to the Dakota Territory. There he cleansed himself of his unbearable sorrow. And here's a lesson in his sad story. By immersing himself in activity, learning to ride Western style, rope steer, and hunt bison. Months later, he returned to his real life, a changed man, and became one of our nation's greatest leaders. Now, you may not have such lofty aspirations. Still, following in Theodore's footsteps might be the best move for you right now. We've often talked on this show about the value of exercise, and Roosevelt's story shows the value of getting physical. We know exercise is good for us, but most of us don't get enough of it. Even when things are going well, when we're grieving, getting regular exercise can feel like way too much work. But you need to know regular exercise can be of enormous benefit to you in your grief. It not only boosts physical health, but also improves mental health. Exercising regularly, even taking a walk for just, 20 minutes several times a week can help you cope with stress. And let me just add, especially when COVID was at its height, I mostly stayed indoors. I was in a small apartment. I did not feel like going out. I just walked around the apartment.
Hmm.
I put music on or not, and just like walk and daydream, and I didn't have to pay attention, to New York. Well, New York wasn't crowded at the time, but even that, if you don't feel like going out, walk in your house. Just walk around, listen to music, have the TV on in the back room, or in the background, or nothing. Just enjoy that quiet time. But you can walk in your house as well. Now, other ways to become more active include develop a daily exercise strategy that is fun and fits your specific strengths and limits. Plan excursions with physical exercises built in, maybe a hike or bike ride, maybe a round of golf with friends. You can easily get more exercise by simply parking farther away from any building you plan to enter. Be aware that your body never lies. Learning its language and listen to its signals carefully. Don't become obsessed or overdo it, but don't underdo it either by making up excuses to avoid exercise. With that in mind, please go to our webpage to find the recipe for hummingbird sheet cake and additional resources for this program. We also ask for your support in the form of a tax-deductible contribution so that we can continue to offer you quality programming. Many of you have contacted Everyone Dies to say how Marianne's years of experience with serious illness, dying, death, and bereavement have helped you, family, and loved ones, including pets. So thank you for going to our website to make your donation, as well as following us on Facebook and Instagram. Visit us at www.everyonedies.org. That's every, the number one, dies, Marianne?
Thanks, Charlie. Emily Post's book, Etiquette, was published in 1922, and the 100th anniversary edition was released last year. Mrs. Post was born in 1872 and died at age 87 in New York City. Her great-great-grandchildren are now running her institute. Now, Edwin and Mrs. Post had 2 sons after moving to Staten Island. Emily and Edwin divorced in 1905 because of his affairs with chorus girls and amateur actresses, which made him a target for blackmail, among other things. She started writing novels when her boys went to boarding school. Now, her first edition of her etiquette book, Etiquette in Society, in Business, in Politics, and at Home, was published in 1922, frequently referenced as Etiquette. And she didn't write that till she was 50. It became a bestseller with numerous editions over the following decades. After 1931, Post spoke on radio programs and wrote a column on good taste for the Bell Syndicate. The column appeared daily in over 200 newspapers after 1932. Now, when I was growing up, I don't know if it was this way in your family, but Emily Post really kept us all from being animals. Like, if we misbehaved or something, our mom would say, well, now, what would Emily Post say? And if we gave advice about, you shouldn't act like that, you might get the comment back, and who do you think you are, Emily Post? And my mom had a copy of her book. Emily Post's book was sort of a navy blue Bible of, if you needed to know what you were supposed to do in any situation, you could go look at Emily Post's book and she would tell you. And let me tell you, she told you in no uncertain terms. Emily Post's books answered every question that could be asked in polite society and really seemed to have an opinion about everything. Given my role as a developing cranky old woman, I do find myself wishing that people would follow Emily Post's rules a little bit more, like men would take off their baseball hats when they're inside, or that people would not put their phones on speaker in the grocery store, that I have to listen to both sides of the story. But I digress because I could go on forever about manners, it seems. And there's times when I'm out to dinner with my husband where I'll say, am I turning into a crabby old woman? And he'll say, well, like you go to the restaurant and the music's on so loud you can't hear each other.
Yep.
It's like, what the heck? Turn it down, right?
Yeah.
So today, I'm going to let you know what Emily Post would have to say about writing a letter of condolence. First, no, you cannot just send an email. No, no, no. Somewhere, someone gave you some nice note cards or writing paper. The condolence note is the time to use it. But first, this is what Mrs. Post has to say on the topic. She says intimate letters of condolence are like love letters, and that they're too sacred to follow a set form. One rule, and one only, should guide you in writing such letters. Say what you truly feel. Say that and nothing else. Sit down at your desk. Let your thoughts dwell on the person that you're writing to. Don't dwell on the details of the illness or the manner of death. Don't quote endlessly from poets and scriptures. Remember that eyes filmed with tears and an aching heart cannot follow rhetorical lengths of writing. The more nearly a note can express a hand clasp, a thought of sympathy, above all, a genuine love or appreciation of the one who is gone, the greater comfort it brings. Write it as simply as possible and let your heart speak as truly but as briefly as you can. Forget, if you can, that you're using written words. Think merely of how you feel. Then put your feelings on paper. That is all. Now, suppose a young mother who has died. You think how young and sweet she was and her little children, and literally your heart aches for them and her husband and her own family. Into your thoughts must come some expression of what she was and what their loss must be. Or maybe it's the death of a man who has left a place in the whole community that will be difficult, if not impossible, to fill, and you think of all he stood for that was fine and helpful to others, and how much and sorely he will be missed. all you can think of is, "Dear Steve, what a prince he was. I don't think everything will ever be the same without him." Say just that. Ask if there's anything you can do at any time to be of service to his people. There's really nothing more to be said. A line into which you have unconsciously put a little of the genuine feeling that you had for Steve is worth pages of eloquence. A letter of condolence may be abrupt, badly constructed, ungrammatical. Never mind. Grace of expression counts for nothing. Sincerity alone is of value. Do not say to one whose life has been forever desolate by the loss of an outstanding character or genius, "I remember that big-brimmed hat she wore," or seeing him reading his newspaper on the train. Nothing more unappreciative could be imagined. The only things of the least comfort at such time are letters which show appreciation of the character, talent, charm, or any other quality whatsoever that was actual and outstanding in the personality of the one mourned. The letter from friends and associates expressing genuine affection for a man's personality or admiration for his character and unreplaceable ability are the only ones that share a widow's or mother's grief. An occasional letter from one who has suffered an undeniably equal loss, who in sincerity writes words of encouragement and assurance that in time of pain will grow less instead of greater, is of genuine help. But such a letter must never be written by anyone whose own suffering has not been equally devastating. Glibly listed qualities that do not exist are as meaningless as attributes of true greatness, entirely overlooked. So then she goes on to write about examples of notes and telegrams, because we still send telegrams, but in 1922 they did. So here's some examples of some notes. As has been said above, a letter of condolence must, above everything, express a genuine statement. A few examples are inserted here merely as suggestive guides for those at a loss to construct a short but appropriate note. For example, "My dear Mrs. Neighbor, we are so very much shocked to hear the sorrow that has come to you. If there's anything that either I or my husband can do, I earnestly hope that you will ask someone to call upon us. With sincerely affectionate regard." Now, I think her example does not really reflect what she just told us about, having something that's talks about the person themselves. Another thing that we know is that saying, "if there's anything that I can do," is really kind of a lost words. It's better to leave a lasagna on the doorstep or a bunch of flowers and just do things rather than wait for someone to, come to you and say, "Well, actually, I do have something that you can do, and here's what it is." So we disagree respectfully with Mrs. Post on that one. Another example she has is, "My dear Mrs. Neighbor, I know how little words written on a page can possibly mean to you at such a time, but I must at least tell you that you are in our thoughts and in our hearts, and that if there's anything that we can do to you, please send us a message, whatever it may be, with deepest sympathy." Again, don't wait for people to ask you, because they're not going to. Just do it. She also has an example of a letter where death was a release. And I found this really interesting. She says the letter to one whose loss is, quote unquote, "for the best," is difficult in that you want to express sympathy but cannot feel sad that one who has long suffered has found release. The expression of sympathy in this case should not be for the present death, but for the illness or whatever it was that fell long ago. The grief for a paralyzed mother is for the stroke which cut her down many years before, and your sympathy, though you may not have realized it, is for that. You might write, "Your sorrow during all these years and now is in my heart, and all my thoughts and sympathy are with you." I like that one. I thought that was kind of nice.
Absolutely, yes.
So choosing the right words to write to a friend or family member who is grieving is an important but very difficult skill. By carefully selecting and sharing words of comfort, your note can be one of healing and encouragement for the bereaved. The chosen words can make a positive difference in the life of the one grieving and reassure the griever that you care for the relationship. The words we choose to use to someone who is grieving the death of a loved one can be a very delicate task. Not writing a condolence note or the use of insensitive words may be remembered for years. Now, you can purchase a sympathy card instead of using your stationery, but even so, you should write a note on the inside. Now, for me, I always send a piece of mourning jewelry in my condolence note to offer the griever something tangible in their grief. And if you go to our website, you can see that you can make a tax-deductible donation and choose a piece of mourning jewelry for a very inexpensive price and include that. And that really means a lot to people. I've been doing that for over 20 years, and people really love getting, a pair of earrings or a bracelet, and we have them for men too, and even with little charms for pets or babies, stillborn babies, so that you can get something special for your friend that they will always have. And that means a lot to people. So that's another thing that you can do. I have a friend who would always say, the nice thing to do is the right thing to do. So when in doubt, do a nice thing. Write a condolence note that would make Emily Post and your mother proud. Now, Charlie has some guidelines that can help with understanding what to say. Charlie?
So, 5 tips that will assist in choosing the words to write. Give yourself time to consider what to say. One of the main reasons that wrong words are chosen is that we don't take time to pause and think. Thinking first not only makes the words chosen more powerful, but it also helps eliminate words that simply would not be appropriate. Be aware of the connotations of words. The task in carefully choosing the right words is to consider how the person will understand and accept the words that you will write. What meaning will the bereaved read into the words? Words that might be appropriate under normal conditions may become completely out of place in the setting of grief. Choose words that fit the personality of the bereaved. If the friend who is grieving is a scholar, the words that are chosen can be vivid and descriptive. If the friend does not use the words chosen, they are likely to come across as arrogant, meaningless, and impersonal. Be true to yourself. The words chosen should reflect the personality and purpose of the speaker. Choose words and phrases that are part of your vocabulary. What will be the purpose in sharing the words? Words of encouragement may take a lighter, positive tone, while offering words of heartfelt, deep sympathy may be somber and tear-evoking. Eliminate the wrong words. Sometimes choosing the right words is greatly assisted by not choosing the wrong words. Pause long enough to reflect on what words would be inappropriate in the setting. Narrow the choices to a manageable number of words. Poet A.E. Housman once said, "I did not choose the right word. I got rid of the wrong one." Choose words carefully in order to offer comfort and wisdom. Your thoughts will make a difference, and your support will be remembered for years to come.
Did you get any condolence notes in the past couple of years that have had a lot of meaning for you?
Yes. Several, and my and it was nice. Some friends just really, I could see they were struggling just to say the perfect words, and others, I don't know. When Michael died, my son, he there was a Japanese family. They've since retired. They're in Tokyo, but I used to teach the gentleman English, as a second language. They met. Michael absolutely adored him, and his wife. I mean, he wrote a lovely letter with different quotes. His wife first apologized that her English was not as good as her husband's, but after that said she thought that I might enjoy listening to some music, and that's all she wrote. And it was this wonderful DVD of, I don't even know how to describe it. There was some classical, something, some more contemporary songs. Um, it was perfect. It was it was
Hmm.
it was just that. Um, and a couple of other friends, they one guy that got into the building where I was staying at the time, and he didn't come up. He just got into the building, and then texted me, said, "I left something outside your door. It's not lasagna." It's not lasagna. It's not a pot roast or something to that effect. I opened it, and there was a bottle of gin, and a
Perfect.
couple of limes, and a small bottle of vermouth, and some tonic water. It was perfect.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, yeah, yeah. And when you were saying that about just finding the right words, I mean, years ago, um, a woman I know become friendly. Her husband died. I mean, we were all relatively young, um, and all I wrote to her was "sucks," but he was so lucky to have you. That literally, it was something to that effect. Um, and months later, she contacted me and she said how much she appreciated that. It just,
Yeah.
it was, yeah, it was just to the point. So just that, just you folks know, your friends and loved ones. No, it doesn't have to be flowery, as Mrs. Post says, but your friends. Just get to the point. It's much more appreciated. Yeah.
And let's bring back some civilization into our society. I think a little bit more Emily Post wouldn't hurt anybody.
Um. Oh, what the hell? Yeah. At when my father died. I'm laughing because this became, well, anyways, when my father died, yeah, people started showing up early. There was supposed to be, a time. And you know what, ladies and
Ugh.
gentlemen? Yeah, don't get me started. Well, okay, since you got me started. Yeah,
I didn't get you started.
no,
I
you're
know
right.
this story.
No, yeah, you're right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let's get to the point here. Listen, as I've said before, it's your party and you'll die as you want to. Uh, there were specific visiting times for family, and then after that the masses could come in. Yeah, at my dad's funeral people ignored that, and people just started showing up when the time that should have been for immediate family only. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to spend a little quiet time with my dad, and yeah, people are in the background laughing and speaking loudly, and I thought, what the fire truck. Yeah, I had to say words, and it's like, why did I have to say anything? I just wanted a few minutes
Because
quietly
people
with my dad.
don't know manners anymore.
Yeah, it's true, Mary
I
Ann.
don't know if we as parents aren't teaching it. I don't know where it's fallen down, but I really think it begins at home. Don't get me started. I think it has to do with serving dinner at the table so kids learn good table manners.
Hmm.
How to use a napkin
Yeah,
and a knife and a fork and have a conversation during dinner. I mean, there's just so many places where you say, what the heck? Can we be just a little more civilized?
Yeah, no, you are absolutely right. And what I've seen over the years, everything is about convenience nowadays. It is slowly morphed into that, and it's what's convenient for me. And if I want to, and it's a lot here, somebody wants to walk down the street, texting, not paying attention that they're going to run into someone, and Marianne times crossing the street, not noticing you have the red light, and just keep I I just don't get that. Or in a movie
So now,
theater,
so now you see,
yeah.
now you see why I say to David, am I turning into a crabby old woman? Because you and I could go on for hours talking about what the
And you
heck.
know what? To that point, I disagree when you say crabby. Really, this is the change in our society. It's what's convenient for me.
And dag nabbit, we don't like it.
Yeah.
So I have 2 copies of Emily Post's book. I think one of mine's from 1926 and one of them's from the 50s. I think she would come out like with 7 editions a year. It was
Really?
literally one of
Wow.
it was literally one of those books that like the encyclopedia was in people's houses.
Right. I remember.
Did you?
Yes.
I know that. Did your mom ever refer to Emily Post?
No.
My mother did all the time.
No. But yeah, no, different friends' mothers would, and I just remember it was just part of our generation. I would occasionally would see something in the paper about Mrs. Post and something she had said, and wow, I remember quoting her sometimes, or saying something like, "Would Mrs. Post like that?" or whatever. But
Right,
yeah.
exactly. What would Mrs. Post say?
Yeah.
Or my mother in her subtlety would cut out, like the questions and answers from Mrs. Post
Okay.
and put them on the refrigerator. Like, I'm not really going to say this, but Mrs. Post can.
In the Washington Post, are you familiar with the columnist Miss Manners?
Oh God, yes.
I actually had the pleasure of meeting her. I mean, years ago, when an old friend lived down the street from Miss Manners.
Wow.
And what did I do? I remember I was trying to stand straight, my back perfectly straight, and making direct eye contact. And she finally just looked. I don't know what we were discussing. She finally looked at me. She goes, "Would you please calm down?" or something to that effect. It's like, "Yes, ma'am." But very nice, very charming woman. I used to read her all the time. Huh.
Yeah, she's still in there.
Very good. So, please stay tuned for the continuing saga of Everyone Dies. And thank you for listening. Since incidents of grief run through this episode, we are pleased to present, in their first appearance together, Queen Elizabeth II and Keanu Reeves. From Her Majesty, Grief is the Price We Pay for Love. And from John Wick himself, grief changes shape, but it never ends. This is Charlie Navarrete.
And I'm Marianne Matzo, and we'll see you next week. Remember, every day is a gift.
This podcast does not provide medical advice. All discussion on this podcast, such as treatments, dosages, outcomes, charts, patient profiles, advice, messages, and any other discussion are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Always seek the advice of your primary care practitioner or other qualified health providers with any questions that you may have regarding your health. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard from this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Everyone Dies does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, practitioners, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned in this podcast. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast by persons appearing on this podcast at the invitation of Everyone Dies or by other members is solely at your own risk.